In the black waters of the Pacific, the sea carried more than men. It carried fear and destiny. Inside the landing craft, U.S. Marines clutched rifles slick with sweat. Ahead, the islands of the Empire waited, silent, fortified, and armed with steel beasts few had ever seen. The Japanese called them sensha, tanks. The Marines would learn to call them something else, nightmares made of metal. Guadalcanal, the first encounter. Guadalcanal, the first great test for the Marines in the Pacific. The enemy came not only from the jungle, but from the ground itself. The 1st Marine Division, led by Major General Alexander von der Grift, dug in along the Tenarue River. On the night of August 21, 1942, Japanese tanks of the 1st Independent Tank Company, Type 97 Chihas, clanked toward the perimeter. Lieutenant Colonel Ichiki Kiyonao led the assault, convinced his blitz would sweep the Americans back into the sea. In the darkness, Marines heard the growl, like thunder in the jungle. "Tanks! Get ready!" shouted Sergeant John Bassalone, manning a water-cooled Browning. The jungle erupted in tracers and fire. Bazookas found their mark. One tank burst into flames. Another was swallowed by the riverbank. When the sun rose, 11 Japanese tanks lay twisted and silent, their crews gone. The Marines had survived their first encounter with Japan's armored ghost. But it was only the beginning. Tarawa, the lesson in blood. November 20th, 1943, Bedio Island, Tarawa Atoll, a speck of coral barely 2 miles long, yet guarded by one of the most formidable Japanese garrisons in the Pacific. Colonel Shoup commanded the assault. "We'll get on that beach and we'll stay there." When the tide failed to rise, Marines waded through chest-deep water, easy targets for machine guns. But as they reached the sand, another terror rolled toward them. 14 Japanese tanks from the 7th Sasebo Special Naval Landing Force counterattacked at dusk. The lead tank crushed a half-track and fired point-blank into the trenches. Private Alexander Bonnyman Jr. grabbed a flamethrower and ran straight into the chaos. He torched the first tank, clearing the way for bazooka teams. One after another, the Hagos exploded under American fire. By midnight, every Japanese tank on Tarawa was destroyed. But the cost was staggering. 1,700 Marines were dead or wounded. Bedio became the classroom of blood where the Marines learned. In the Pacific, armor could appear anywhere, even from beneath the sand. Saipan, the Great Tank Charge, June 1944. The island of Saipan, gateway to Japan. The 2nd and 4th Marine Divisions landed under fire so fierce it tore landing craft apart. Yet hidden behind the cane fields, Japanese armor waited for one decisive strike. Colonel Keiji Nagumo, cousin of the admiral who led Pearl Harbor, commanded the tanks of the 9th Tank Regiment. On the night of July 16th, he unleashed the largest tank attack of the Pacific War. 44 tanks roared toward the Marine lines. Their guns flashed like lightning across the plain. Major Edward B. Cranford Shermans from the 2nd Tank Battalion moved to intercept. In minutes, Saipan became an inferno of crossing fire. Marines with bazookas crawled between burning cane stalks, firing at silhouettes barely 10 yards away. When dawn came, every Japanese tank lay burning. The counterattack had been annihilated. Nagumo was dead, his men shattered. The Marines called it the Night of Fire. The Japanese called it Gyokusai, honorable death. Peleliu, the tanks in the hills, September 1944. Peleliu, an island the size of Manhattan, but more deadly than any battlefield yet. The 1st Marine Division landed under 110-degree heat. The Japanese commander, Colonel Kunio Nakagawa, had dug his tanks deep into coral ridges, using them as immobile bunkers. The Marines advanced yard by yard, every step a duel with an invisible enemy. Tanks that could no longer move still fired, entombed in caves. Captain Everett Pope and his men fought 3 nights atop Bloody Nose Ridge, calling naval fire on tanks that spat shells from underground positions. The battle lasted 74 days. Of Nakagawa's 10,000 defenders, only 202 survived. The Marines had destroyed every tank, but at a cost that questioned whether any island was worth the price. Iwo Jima, the Buried Beasts, February 19, 1945. Iwo Jima. Black sand, sulfur fumes, in a fortress of steel beneath the ground. Lieutenant General Tadamichi Kuribayashi commanded 21,000 defenders and 28 tanks, most buried to their turrets, waiting like crocodiles in the ash. His orders: each man will kill 10 of the enemy before dying. When the Marines of the 5th Division hit the beaches, they found no visible tanks, only gunfire from nowhere. Then as they advanced, hidden turrets opened fire. A Type 97 buried near airfield number 1 destroyed 2 Shermans before a flamethrower tank. A Sherman Zippo turned it into molten glass. Corporal Tony Stein, wielding a machine gun salvaged from a wrecked aircraft, charged the bunkers one by one until he fell. For his valor, he received the Medal of Honor. The Marines called Iwo Jima Hell's Anvil. Kuribayashi refused to surrender. When it ended, nearly every Japanese tanker was dead, fighting from the steel coffins they'd welded into the island itself. Okinawa, the last armor of the empire. April 1st, 1945, Okinawa. The largest amphibious assault of the Pacific. 180,000 troops landing under gray skies. Here the Japanese would make their final stand. General Mitsuru Ushijima and his deputy General Isamu Cho commanded the 32nd Army. Among their units, the 27th Tank Regiment, equipped with the Type 97 Shinhoto Chiha, Japan's most advanced medium tank. At first, the tanks stayed hidden in caves, but when American armor pushed inland, Ushijima ordered them out. On May 4, 1945, 12 tanks charged near Shuri Castle. They were met by Shermans of the 6th Marine Division and aircraft from the escort carriers offshore. One by one, the Japanese tanks were destroyed. Captain Haruo Takeichi, commanding the final platoon, radioed his last words: "Tell the Emperor the 27th has fought to the end." Moments later, his tank vanished in smoke. Okinawa was the last armored battle of the Pacific. When it ended, 110,000 Japanese were dead. The Marines had fought across 6,000 miles of ocean and annihilated every tank force Japan could field. The Hunter's evolution. From 1942 to 1945, the U.S. Marines evolved from Green Island fighters to masters of armored warfare. They learned to read the jungle, to hear the enemy before seeing him. Intelligence teams studied aerial photographs, signal intercepts tracked tank radio chatter. Pilots marked tank revetments from the air with smoke shells, guiding Sherman Zippos below. New weapons followed: 2.36-inch and later 3.5-inch bazookas, 75mm half-tracks, and napalm flamethrowers. Each battle was a lesson carved in blood. Every island, a classroom of survival. The tankers themselves. Beneath every helmet was a man, both American and Japanese, who faced terror through steel. Sergeant Bill Reynolds, 4th Tank Battalion, wrote in his journal, "In this heat, you can smell the tank before you see it. Burnt oil, cordite, and fear. That's the scent of the Pacific." On the other side, Corporal Masao Okubo wrote home from Saipan, "We bury our tanks so they cannot be taken. I will die inside mine. It is my house now." Different flags, same fate. Men entombed in metal, fighting for islands most had never heard of before the war. Aftermath and legacy. When Japan surrendered in August 1945, fewer than 200 operational tanks remained across all the Pacific Islands. The United States had produced over 50,000 Shermans. The imbalance was total, but victory had been earned the hard way. Marines who fought through Tarawa, Saipan, and Okinawa never forgot the smell of burning armor or the faces of the tankers inside. Many would later help shape modern Marine doctrine, the tactics of combined arms, flame and steel that are still studied today. And on the islands themselves, rusting hulls still lie half buried in sand. Silent memorials to the duel between the hunter and the hunted. The war in the Pacific was more than a clash of nations. It was a test of human will, fought in jungles, on coral reefs, and through the roar of machines. The U.S. Marines learned to track the unseen, to listen for the growl of engines in the night. For every tank they destroyed, another lesson was learned. About courage, about sacrifice, about the thin line between hunter and prey. The Japanese tankers fought with impossible bravery, often to the last man. The Marines answered with determination born of survival. In the end, both sides left ghosts on those islands. Ghosts made of fire, iron, and memory. This is their story, the story of men who hunted shadow and found them,